afternoon. Hello friends, thank you for coming today. We are so glad you're here. I'm Miranda from Wood TV 8 and I love the Van Andel Institute and the good work being done here every single day. These are our public lecture series and we do these to give you an opportunity to learn about the work happening and all of the different areas here at the Institute. Today's an exciting topic. We are looking at the present and the future of education. And if you're like me, you're like, I have no idea what's happening in classrooms, but I want to find out because our kids often know way more than we do, especially when it comes to technology. So we've seen it, the traditional linear education approach. You memorize, you quiz, you memorize, you do homework, you memorize, you test. That approach prioritizes memorizing as a study form, neglecting skills often needed for real-world problem solving. And when we think about the kinds of students we want, the kinds of employees we want, the kinds of leaders we want, they definitely need to have more than just the memorization piece. And I love how the Institute is jumping in on this. Our Van Andel Institute for Education, they're here to help. The educators are hard at work putting together creative ways to bring learning to life that engages kids with critical thinking, creativity, and just going outside the box. We were talking about it just a few minutes ago, that every time I visit the Education Institute, I see those instructors excited about learning, and they get me excited to learn new ways to think. Before introducing today's speaker, I want to give a special thanks to our presenting sponsor for this lecture, the Lake Michigan Credit Union. LMCU is a longtime partner of VAI, and the organization has a storied history of supporting education in and around our community. Let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you so much, Lake Michigan Credit Union. Today we are joined by Terra Tarango, Director and Education Officer at VAI for Education. She is an accomplished advocate in education industry with more than 20 years of experience in educational publishing and services. She developed award-winning print and digital curriculum and is an expert in instructional climate and culture. Terra has devoted her career to increasing curiosity, creativity, and critical thinking in the classroom. She also is an Art Prize artist entry. Isn't that exciting? At the conclusion of our program, we'll have some time for a Q&A. If you're in the audience, you can raise your hand. We'll have microphones brought to you. If you are online, we would love for you to use that chat function to go ahead and ask your questions as well. Please join me in welcoming Terra Tarango.
Thanks, Miranda. Thank you guys for coming. Welcome. I'm always delighted to talk education with folks, anyone who's interested in hearing not only what's going on in education, what are schools looking like these days, but also what is the Van Andel Institute doing about it? How can we be part of the solution, part of advancing innovation? So today we're going to be talking about down the rabbit hole, curiosity as the path to innovation. But before I take you down the rabbit hole, we're going to start with just sort of the landscape of education. If we can get the clicker working. Any ideas? Maybe. There we go. Let's go back. Anyway, okay, there we go. Tech glitches out of the way. So the educational landscape, we'll start with that. I did want to let you know, if you haven't already, if you can join the Wi-Fi, you may want to do that, because if you want to really get a firsthand look at how is AI really instructing and informing classrooms and how students are interacting with that, I'm going to give you a chance to do that later. So do you guys, this is a small group, did you get the code for Wi-Fi? Let me know if you need it, we can put it back. Okay, can we put that back really quick? It doesn't work?
It doesn't work on my phone.
Let's see, do you want to choose VAI guest and password no? I do think that is case sensitive, so I'll give you a chance to do that. And those of you online, welcome to you as well. Hopefully you are already online, you have Wi-Fi, but you will have a chance to check that out later. All right, we'll go ahead and flip back to that. Thank you so much. All right, so I like to just start, some people just sort of wonder, what is the state of education? You may have heard things out there, it's dire, it's panic, we're doing terrible, we spend more money than anybody else. So I kind of want to just level set some of the facts here. So one of the main things we look at in terms of our relationship with other countries and how we are doing, is this education system failing, is something called PISA. This is the Program for International Student Assessment, and it is a test that is given to students every 3 years across over 80 countries. So it's a pretty good indicator of how things are doing. If I can learn to use a clicker, we'll be golden. So this is where we stand. So this is looking at from 20 to 2024 is I think the latest, or maybe it's 2022, the latest scores. But so we are 6th in reading. That's pretty doggone good. Out of 80 countries, that is not bad at all. 10th in science, which is pretty solid, above the average in science. Math has been trailing. That is a little bit of a concern. So we're about middle of the pack, I'd say, in math. So not consistently a top performer like something like Singapore or Finland you might hear about, but certainly not a failed system where we're just not even competing with the rest of the country. So I think that's important to level set. Then you can look at something called NAEP. This is what we call the Nation's Report Card. This is a US test that is given to 4th and 8th graders. And this is really interesting to look at. This is where you can see the impact of COVID. So you can see in 2019 are these sort of orange maze for Michigan fans out there, bar. So you can see that's 2019, and then it goes to blue for 2022. So that's the COVID gap across math and reading, 4th grade and 8th grade. You see that huge gap. The most concerning part of this is it's not necessarily even proportionate the way this gap has come to be. Those who were struggling already are the ones who tended to actually fall even further behind, right? Which makes sense. Those families that are low income didn't really have the means to keep that education going in the midst of the pandemic. So you can see a little bit of rebounds in 4th grade math in 2024. Math stayed pretty stagnant to where it was after the pandemic in 8th grade, and then continued to lose a little more ground in reading. So let's talk about spending. So this will show you where do we fall. So we certainly spend a little more than the average, about 38% more than the average the countries spend per pupil. But we're not the top spender. We're about, what is it, 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that kind of gives you a sense. The other thing that's important to note about this is it's also not very equal. This is an average across the United States. So if you are if you're curious, which is the theme of today, the state that spends the least on education is Idaho, at around $9,500. The state or territory, I guess, that spends the most is Washington, D.C., at almost $30,000. So you can see there's a pretty big gap in there. But here's where the average falls out, about $15,800 per student. All right, so is the U.S. education system failing? Another way to look at it, I'd say, it's actually not test scores that are my biggest concern, it's a people concern. Teacher turnover is a real problem here in the United States, and not just turnover, we're looking at about 14 to 16% annually leaving this profession, and that's been dramatically increased with COVID. The job is really tough, if not impossible. You're also seeing a really dearth of people coming into the profession. There's not many people going into college saying, yes, I want to be a teacher. So we do have a real teacher shortage issue on our hands, as well as this turnover issue, which is really difficult for a school to get traction with that kind of turnover. We also have professional development funding that is kind of at risk and then taken away and then reinstated and then at risk and then taken away. This has been going on, not just the latest round of funding uncertainty, but over the last couple years this has been happening. So you have this kind of concerning situation where just where teachers are feeling the most vulnerable, the most unsupported, you also are taking the rug out from under them with not giving the resources, the professional development to help them feel like they are, ready and inspired to stay in the classroom and thrive. And that's really where Van Andel steps in. We want to make sure, no matter what's happening in terms of federal or state education policies, we're there to provide teachers with the resources and the inspiration they need to thrive in their classrooms and hopefully stay. So is it failing? I'd say no. It's not a failing system, but it's not future ready either. So this is what I want your takeaway to be from this. So anytime you see the little mushroom here, that's a key takeaway. So if you wonder when you should pay attention when you see the mushroom. So I would say, what I want to take you from that, I don't want you to remember that we are the 6th in spending, or that we are 6th in reading, or 10th in science, any of that. I want you to reimagine what counts as success. That's what I really want us to do. So what should count as success? Well, we asked our own scientists here at VAI and scientists and engineers across a multitude of different disciplines, and we asked them to rank what skills and characteristics here are most valuable to you. And this is how that came out. I'll make it a little easier by highlighting the top 5 and the bottom 5. So this is what came out. Maybe not too surprising, but what do you think happens if I ask teachers, what do schools value most? Here's how that went. And watch, almost everything that was green sunk to the bottom, and everything that was red, rose to the top. teachers, whether this is true or not, you can argue with administrations, but teachers feel like schools value test scores, good grades, memorization, and content knowledge, when those are the very things that our scientists and engineers are saying are not as valuable to them. Risk-taking is a little bit of an outlier there, because I think the scientists interpret that as like someone coming in and like destroying expensive equipment in the lab, whereas in the classroom we're thinking about that as being willing to fail, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So maybe we need to clarify our question a little bit on that, but I think this is interesting. And as a result of this, we really kind of solidified our teaching around these 7 success skills that come out of what our scientists and engineers told us is most important. And by the way, it's not just scientists and engineers that this is important for. Pretty much you could argue these skills are good for whatever industry or pursuit that our students want to go after. But collaboration, communication, creative thinking, critical thinking, curiosity, perseverance, and self-direction. These are what we really try to instill in every part of our classroom instructions. So now, as promised, I would like to invite you to Wonderland. So how do we do this? How do we make inquiry-based instruction a reality in classroom? What is inquiry-based instruction? Well, I can't think of anybody best to guide us through this journey than our characters from Alice in Wonderland. So we're going to use them as guides as we take them through. This is just my personal, I have the stage. I love Alice in Wonderland, so here we are. So if you don't, I apologize, but we're going along the journey down the rabbit hole. So the first character I'd like to introduce to you is the White Rabbit. So the White Rabbit, of course, is always looking at his watch, always in a hurry, racing through the world, which is a pretty good metaphor for the world we live in today. Who doesn't feel like the world is changing at a dizzying pace? Whether it's technology, whether it's cultural change, all this stuff is just whizzing by us. Meanwhile, our education system is stuck back, honestly, in the 1700s is kind of where some of this system started, but where this focus on compliance or memorization or test scores, which is really not preparing these students for the future that they're about to inherit. So our messenger of urgency is here. I do think, as I said, it's not time to panic. I don't want to feed into any of that. It's not a failing system, but this world is moving by very fast, and we do need to make some changes to make sure our students are ready for our classrooms are future ready. So, and the way we do that is with just small sparks of curiosity or a playful moment of inquiry, and never doubt the power of some of those small bits of playfulness and inquiry and what they can yield. So to do that, I want to tell you a surprise story. This is surprise story number 1 of 4. So this surprise story is all about, I'm going to take you, hold on, playfulness and inquiry. Okay, so never doubt that these can be important. So let's go back to World War II. And think of the battleships that are out here on the Pacific or the Atlantic, and there's some really expensive equipment on these ships, right? So we have a naval engineer who is tasked with making sure that these pieces of equipment are stabilized, that they're not swooshing along with all the swells of the ocean and crashing to the floor. So he's got a pretty important, serious task, and he's got lots of prototypes in his lab to try to make this work. And as luck would have it, one day he's a little bit of an oaf, and he bumps into his lab bench, and one of these sort of prototypes falls to the floor, and it didn't do exactly what he's expected. He thought it would just sort of fall as a chunk of metal and just sit there or maybe break apart, but instead it moved kind of strangely, and it kind of caught his attention. And a lot of people might have said, well, let me just move that along, clean it up, keep going working on my serious project. But he was curious. He wondered why it did that, and then the next thing he did was he played with it. He had that sense of inquiry, and he had this playful spirit, and he found it did some things that were sort of delightful and interesting. And so out of that came something that ended up being a product that sells millions and millions, and something that leads to lots of joy in our life, which is the Slinky. So never doubt that playfulness and curiosity can spark a revolution. Just that simple moment of playfulness led to us all knowing and loving this lovely toy. Again, a mushroom takeaway. And notice there, it's also a great example of 2 of our 7 skills, probably lots of other ones as well, but I like to focus on these 2. Obviously, it was curiosity that really drove that this kind of into being, and he wasn't given a roadmap. Okay, here's how you're going to turn this into something that the world is going to love. He had to have that self-direction to figure out how to take it from his lab there, and then obviously finish out the task and stabilize the equipment on the battleships, but also bring it to the market as the Slinky. All right, our next character taking us on this journey is, of course, the Mad Hatter. I can't think of a better person or character, I suppose, to bring us on this than the Mad Hatter. Because, of course, he is the king of nonsense, riddles, and endless questions. So if we're going to talk about inquiry, he's a great person to take us on this journey. So I want to first introduce the idea of why is inquiry important? Well, I want to share with you, if you haven't seen the movie Apollo 13 from a while back, fantastic movie, must see. And if you haven't, you're going to get about a minute clip of it right now. So let's play this clip to show us why inquiry-based learning might be important. All right, so I hope you could hear it there, but my favorite line of that, and hopefully you recognize it if you've seen the film, is we got to make this fit into this using only that, right? Which is a similar task to things that we face in Alice's world, in our world. There's all these sort of nonsensical situations that come up with, and we have to figure out how to solve these problems. Spoiler alert, they did figure this out, and the astronauts of Apollo 13 did splash down safely. So again, a highly recommended movie. But I think this is a great illustration of why do we need inquiry? Because if we think about the typical classroom setting where you teach something and then you ask the question and then they answer. Okay, that's fantastic. But these folks were given a question that they didn't know the answer to. So we have to give our students practice with tackling problems that they don't know the answer to already, instead of just asking them questions that we expect them to already know the answers for. Another reason to do that is perseverance. This is a real issue, I think, particularly culturally. So I really am interested in this study. This is a study from the 1970s, and they gave first graders an impossible math problem, or impossible for them at their level. And our US first graders abandoned this problem in under 30 seconds. The same problem was given to Japanese first graders, and guess how long they grappled with this problem? About 60 minutes. There's a huge cultural difference there. And that's something, this was in the 1970s. I wish they would redo this study so we have more recent data, but I venture to guess it's pretty similar. We know our students today really lack this perseverance. Culturally, we lack this perseverance. We want immediate gratification. If not, we're out of there. If we can't solve the problem, we're done. And I think this is really important. Again, whether it's the Apollo 13 example, they had to stay with it until they could figure out this problem. You know that the first solution wasn't going to work. So for this, I want to give you another surprise story. All right. Let me think about, oops. Okay, so I had to make sure I had the right one. Okay, so for this one, we're going to go back to 1957, and we have a couple of designers, an engineer and a designer actually, and they are looking to create the most innovative, modern wallpaper of 1957. So they really wanted this kind of futuristic textural kind of approach to it. And they wanted, to kind of think about that sort of sleek, innovative style and aesthetic of the late 1950s. So this is what they were going for. And so they wanted to work with plastic. They took plastic and they kind of put sheets together, kind of quilted it together, took different things, and they were really liking where this was going. They thought this is going to really stand out and be an awesome wallpaper. So they launched it into the market, and guess what? Nobody wanted to put this on their walls. It was very odd. They weren't digging it at all. So they're like, okay, let's try something else. They tried to market it as a insulation for greenhouses. That also didn't work. So their idea just kind of sat there for a couple years until IBM, the computer company, was looking to get their computer out to the masses. And that's when this strange quilted plastic sensation finally found its destiny. And it is bubble wrap. Bubble wrap started as wallpaper, which of course went on to revolutionize the shipping industry and to, obviously protect billions and billions of packages and give us, of course, one of the most satisfying sensory experiences that there is. So that's why we have bubble wrap. So I think it's important to think about, the idea that failure is a part of learning. So if we think about back to our example of the study from the 1970s, in other countries, they see failure and they see struggle as a part of the learning process, actually a sign that they're on the right track. Whereas here in America, we tend to see struggle as a sign of failure. And that's a real shift that we need to make in our classrooms so that we can embrace inquiry, can embrace mistakes as stepping stones to innovation, right? That's another reason why we do it. So I look at these and I think about Apollo and how the creative and critical thinking was important in there. Our study of perseverance, right, and how that's important. So again, we bring in 3 more of those 7 skills into this situation. All right, so what does inquiry look like in the classroom? Sometimes it's just flipping the order that you do things. So let's say we're all students here and I said, all right, we're going to learn about circuits today. Everybody turn to page, I think that's maybe 422 in your textbook, and read this chapter on circuits. Are you excited? Woo! Well, don't worry, because we're going to have some hands-on stuff afterwards. As soon as you learn about that, we're going to go into the lab and we're going to make circuits. Great, to confirm what you already know. Do you think that the scientists upstairs here are just confirming what they already know in their labs? Or are they actually doing something to figure out an answer that doesn't exist yet? So we just flip it and we say, all right, here's a battery and a wire and a light bulb. See if you can get it to work. Okay, we just start with that. Let them mess around. Let them have those playful moments of inquiry. Again, it's not just fluff. It's intentionally get them thinking. And then they have a purpose. So it doesn't matter if they were successful or not. If they were successful, you can say, would you like to know why that worked? Then let's turn to page 432 and read this. So it's not like inquiry means you don't ever read anything anymore, you're not getting scientific knowledge anymore. You are, but maybe sometimes just the order is switched, and now you have a reason to read it. Or if you didn't get it to light, would you like some help in understanding? Because you want to find that sweet spot, right? Where they're, that struggle, that's productive struggle, but not where they're like frustration and tears and you're getting parents, all of that. So you want to find that sweet spot, and then you say, would you like to have some help here? Maybe read page 432 and see if you can get it to light then. So again, you give them a reason, a purpose for learning this, which we'll talk a little bit more later. And that really kind of, another thing that inquiry looks like in the classroom is really celebrating those moments of creativity. So I'll share with you a story from Corey, one of our teachers, and he teaches a class called Ecosystem Explorers. And in this activity, the students are different organisms that are flying organisms. So there's birds and there's bees, and they're flying around the classroom, and they can get nectar from different flowers. And the trick is, different flowers will give you different amounts of nectar, and your goal is to get as much nectar as you can. Now, the birds, the trick to the game is you can't talk. So there's no communication in this game. But this group of middle schoolers, the bird group in particular, found a clever way to get around this rule, and they created some hand signals to tell the other birds which flowers were going to give them the most nectar so that they could win, which would have been fine, except the problem is Corey had planned this so that the bees almost always win. So that in the last round, he kills off the bees, and then the students realize how important bees are to your ecosystem, because the entire ecosystem fails. So now that the birds won, his whole lesson was toast now. But a great educator, and this shows you what his classroom is like, is going to celebrate those moments of creative thinking, right? You can figure out a way to get your message across, but it's a nice way to see that the students were trying to think creatively out of the box, even if it was a little bit around what the teacher had planned. So this is our own classroom, but of course these are always fun to look at, because these are the students that we would love to see up on the Apollo 13 solving these problems. So here's a few more just from the internet. Here's one. What ended in 1896? 1895. Don't you love that kid? How about this one? Find X. Here it is. So fun. Or write a question using Y. Why? Love it. Very efficient. And this is my favorite. Motivate your answer. I'm not really sure what they're going for, but go answer, go. So cute. So again, let's just look at these not just for the humorous kind of take on playfulness and childhood that it is, which it is, but also these are those moments where we want to celebrate and see this as having an actual role in the classroom, and how can we nurture that type of creative thinking. All right, our next character to take us on this journey is the Cheshire Cat. And the Cheshire Cat is always pointing Alice in strange directions. And the reason why I want to mention that is because that gives her a purpose, a reason to collaborate with those around her, to figure out where she needs to go. So the idea of having a purpose and collaborating and communicating with a purpose is something that I think the Cheshire Cat can add to education. And why does this matter? So it's not just about those skills, it also does lead to achievement. So when we have real world connections, or project-based learning, or authentic learning, pick your buzzword of the day, but it's the idea that you're embedding your content into activities and projects that engage students in actually making the world a better place. And when you do that, here's several studies out of the George Lucas Education Foundation recently. They come from Stanford, from University of Michigan, from Michigan State University, from the University of Southern California, that are all showing that when you teach this way, and don't get me wrong, this does take effort, it does take time, something teachers don't have a lot of, but it does pay off. We do get advances in actual achievement with those. So that's one reason why that matters. Let me get a sneak peek. Okay, so this surprise story, I want to tell you about a community. This is a community that's really remarkable. They share resources freely. They support one another. If someone needs support, then they're able to sweep in there and quietly give support to them. Some of the weaker folks in the community are supported by the stronger, the younger are supported by the weaker. If there's danger, they're actually able to share messages with their neighbors to make sure that they can prepare. And this is not some hippie commune in California or anything like that. This is a community that actually is sort of all around us, not too far from us. And it is not a community of people, but a community of trees. So let me introduce you to what scientists call the wood wide web. So underneath the forest floor, there is fungi that is intricately connected. So trees of different species can share nutrients with one another. They can literally send chemical messages when there's danger in the forest. All this is meant to give the community the best chance of survival. So they have this common purpose. So I'd like to use this story to talk about the idea of giving your learning purpose, and that gives you a reason to communicate and collaborate with purpose. Communities thrive when communication and collaboration are woven together with purpose. So here you got the last 2 of our 7 skills, communication and collaboration. So what does this look like in the classroom? Sometimes it comes in the form of real-world experts. So this is one of our teachers, John. He had, I think this is disaster detectives, yes. So each of these students were, and these groups of students were coming up with devices that could save someone's life in a disaster. So they would pick which disaster they're interested in, come up with these ideas, make little prototypes for them, and then they got to pitch them to actual experts from our community, and they picked a winner. So this just gives them, it's an immediate engager, because students, they love performing well for teachers, they love performing well for parents, but they really don't want to mess up in front of an expert. So they really put their best foot forward and come up with some really great ideas. So just having a real world expert there for students to present their work to immediately enhances that authentic engagement and gives them a purpose. Here's another one. We have Michael in the house. This is one of his. And I'm going to invite you later to take a 5-minute journey down to our education facility, and you can try some of this stuff yourself. And he and Ben will lead you in some activities. But this is one where you have real-world application. If the students are working on understanding what animals need to survive, okay, great, they can read about that. Or they know what a zoo looks like. They can design their own habitats. So this is a whole zoo created by these students with the animals that they chose and what they were going to need to survive and thrive in this zoo. And the cool thing about this shows you the engagement of it, is one of these students, and Michael shared this story, is that the student went home and all week was giving zookeeper lectures to his family at home. So we have a future zookeeper just by giving this instruction some real world application, something they can sink their teeth into. Another one, again, the brainchild of this one's in the house too. We got Ben thought up this project. This is a project called Moments to Remember, where students are partnered with an elderly person and they end up learning about their life and writing a biography of their life, which you can see an obvious tie-in to history. They're going to learn, what was going on in the United States while this person was alive. They're going to learn about English language arts. They're going to learn the elements of a biography. They may learn about theme. What was the theme of this person's life? Was it overcoming obstacles, or was it overcoming diversity or obstacles, or was it love of family? What was it? So there's lots of things that are easy with social studies and English language arts. But what about science? You can also integrate that. We would pair students with a senior citizen that was born in the same month, and they could talk about how the night sky was the same, even though they were born 60 years apart. And so they learned patterns of the night sky that way. Or younger kids, maybe they're going to bring a plant to the classroom, and they learn about the needs of the plant and what it takes to survive. So you can weave in science. Math, the elderly person's life is a timeline. So anything that you're going to do on a timeline, young kids, you can work on simple addition and subtraction. Older ones, you can work on multiplication, division, you can work on fractions, decimals, anything you can do with timeline, might as well tie it to a person's life, and giving these meaningful experiences, these real world connections. Here's another one for my Swifties in the house. This was a summer camp. One of our teachers, Jamie, put this on, and this is about authentic engagement. It's not fluff to meet your students where they are and to try to do things, that are going to engage them, because they transfer their love of Taylor Swift right onto a love of coding. So in this case, the students were challenged to create a Taylor Swift city. They each were going to pick their era, or album, for those of you who are not Swifties, and they're going to create all the buildings and streets that go along with that era. And here's the thing, they have to create this sphero, they have a sphero that is like this little tiny robot ball, and they have to code it to give a tour of their part of the city. So it has to do things like light up in certain parts or make sounds as it goes through. So those of you who are Swifties are going to recognize this as the Midnights era, because you go through the lavender haze, through the midnight rain tunnel. So I had to share this because I am a Swiftie. Again, it's my stage, I'm going to do it. So, but again, this enables these students to transfer their love of Taylor Swift to a love of coding. And we've also done this with, you could do it with golf. So we've had them create little mini golf courses, and they can maneuver through those. So the idea is finding what your students love and figuring out a way to teach what you need to teach in that context. And it can really make for some really exciting learning opportunities. All right, last but not least in this section, I'm going to give you an opportunity to think about this question: how can AI help with inquiry? So we do a lot of workshops with teachers talking about what does AI look like in the classroom. A lot of it's aimed at how do we make this easier for teachers. Go ahead and you can click that QR code while you're here while I give this little preamble. And it's going to bring up a place for you to put in your name, just put in your name and then join that group, and then I'll tell you what you're going to do. So some of it is saving them time. It can create lessons for you. It can create letters of recommendation, great. But it can also be an assistant in helping bring inquiry in the classroom. So if I said, would you like to read about photosynthesis? Or would you like to ask a leaf what it's like to go through photosynthesis? Here you have an opportunity to do that. So if you will, and those of you online, feel free to bring out your phone onto your screen and capture this QR code, enter your name, and you'll be given a prompt there where Leafy the Leaf is saying, hello, I'm a leaf, and I'd like to take you on this journey. So I'm going to give you a minute or two to just interact. This is how students would interact, and we're helping teachers learn how to create these. So go ahead and ask whatever question you're curious about. Ask Leafy what it's like. What are you curious about? So I'm going to give you a little bit of time to do that. See where it takes you. And some of you may have already done this because you were that kid, but if not, I encourage you to be that kid who tries to go off task. Maybe ask it, what you should have for dinner tonight. I don't know. And you'll notice what it does. It has a clever way. So this isn't just the broad AI. This is something called school AI, which has been pretty popular in terms of AI platforms in schools, and has some guardrails to it. And one of them is it will help them stay on task. So I think I tried it. I asked, what should I get my grandmother for Christmas? And it was like, I appreciate that you're thinking about kindness and gift giving, but maybe we should get back to the leaf. So it sort of gently nudges you back into the content at hand. So that's one of the cool things about it. Keep playing with it. Another cool thing about it is it, like I said, has some guardrails. It's made for students, so some of the things that you just don't want to show up in here are not going to show up. But also as a teacher, you put your name in there. I'm not going to do this, I promise, but I can see all of your responses. I can go in and see what was Miranda asking, what was Sarah asking. So I can kind of keep tabs on things. And also helps me know, what are they interested in? What do they need to know more about? What are they seeming to grasp? What are they not seeming to grasp? So it's a great way to have them have that self-directed inquiry, but I also can kind of keep tabs and use that to inform my instruction. How are we doing? So really cool tool. This is School AI, just one of many, many new things happening with AI in the classroom that's pretty fun to think about. All right, last character on our journey is, of course, Alice herself, who is the curious child who questions everything. And I have to say, because of that, she is sort of an unexpected hero to me. Someone who asks questions, keeps that curiosity alive, no matter what she's doing. So I consider that, like I said, an unexpected hero. So I'll leave you with one last surprise story. And for this one, we're going to go to the 1980s. And we have a Boy Scout troop that's out in the wilderness in Wyoming near Yellowstone. And one of the kids starts to meander off a little bit, meanders a little bit more. Before he realizes it, he's lost. He tries retracing his steps, but it's not working. He's now miles and miles and miles from where he's supposed to be, and it's starting to get dark. But he's a Boy Scout, so he's like, okay, I can weather this, it's fine. And then he starts to hear that distinct sound of thunder coming, so there is a storm coming, and sure enough, it's dark. It's raining. And luckily there was a flash of light with lightning that just kind of illuminated just enough to him to see a cave. So like, my Boy Scout self tells me I should probably take some shelter in there. So he goes to the cave, huddles up, spends the night there. So 18 hours he's been missing. Meanwhile, he's hoping someone's coming to rescue him. And sure enough, the Boy Scouts did send out the All Alert. They asked for any volunteer helicopter pilots in the area, search and rescue pilots, to start circling the area. We could really use your help to find this poor child who has wandered off. So when he wakes up, sure enough, he starts to hear the tick, 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 tick of the helicopter, and he sees that, first he realizes that he's got to get his attention, so he has his belt buckle, so that Boy Scout training is coming into play as he puts a glint of light into the sky. The helicopter pilot sees it, and so he starts to dip down, circle around, and starts to land. The boy sees it, starts to go to rendezvous. All is going to be well. So he gets there, and sure enough, he is rescued. And the boy's name is Cody Clausen, which you may not know, but you may know the rescuer, who is none other than Harrison Ford. So he got rescued literally by Han Solo, Indiana Jones. This is where I get a little bit jealous of Cody Clausen, but what a cool story. And again, an unexpected hero. So what I want to connect that for you is inquiry prepares our students to be those heroes that we don't see coming, right? It gives them a chance to have that courage, that confidence to do that. And I want to share with you one of our own unexpected heroes. So this is, I don't know what happened to her name there, but this is Kathy. She was as a fourth grader, she had tons of curiosity. Her parents noticed that and enrolled her into our after-school cohort program. And she loved it. She got to study all kinds of things. She stayed with it for 3 years. This is her in 7th grade. This was in around 2015 to 2017, I think, maybe 6th grade. And she's here studying how coke can affect corn plant growth. So she really loved this, fell in love with this idea of inquiry and asking questions. And a few years later, she's at, I don't know what language that is or what that is, but she is at the University of Boston, and she's studying biomedical engineering. This is her freshman year of 2024, and she's gone on to have internships in China. She's really making an impact, and it's just awesome to see one of our own students become one of these unexpected heroes. Oh, this is a quote from her, which I won't remember, but she really liked it. I won't say that. I think it was something about that the after-school program helped her answer all these questions she had about the world, which is really cool. All right, so I want to tell you, you can be an unexpected hero too. Of course, we appreciate our sponsor, Lake Michigan Credit Union, super generous, helps us do all this great work. But really, it doesn't have to be all of that. All you have to do is tell a teacher. If you know a teacher, we don't want to be the best kept secret of West Michigan or the United States. Tell a teacher that these are resources that are available. Have them visit vaieducation.org, and you can be an unexpected hero for us as well. And the other way you can do that is, like I said, by marching down after this, 5-minute walk down and see our classrooms and get to see what these interactive activities look like yourself and have some fun with it. I think you'll really enjoy it. So I invite you to come for that. So lastly, we're going to just go through our mushroom takeaways. There is the first takeaway, reimagining what counts as success. These are our 7 skills. Let's imagine success is that, not PISA scores, not NAEP scores. Let's remember that playfulness and curiosity can spark a revolution. Remember the slinky. Let's remember that inquiry embraces mistakes as stepping stones to innovation. Nobody wanted bubble wrap wallpaper, but it certainly was a stepping stone to innovation in other ways. Remember our wood wide web, that communities thrive when communication and collaboration are woven together with purpose, when we have real world application. And that inquiry prepares kids to be those heroes we don't see coming. So thank you for going down the rabbit hole with me and for visiting VAI and all that we have to offer. If you have any questions, I think we're going to have a Q&A here, but also there's my email and our URL if you'd like to follow up with any of that. Awesome. Come over here.
Thank you, Tara. First of all, isn't it great to see someone excited and eager to think new ways to continue to work with our kids? So thank you for the good work you're doing. Some of your team is here. You've got some of the best of the best. Talk to me a little bit about how you inspire teachers and your Science on the Grand program that gets teachers thinking the way you and your team think.
It's interesting because, if you asked me this maybe 15 years ago, I'd be convincing teachers or trying to convince teachers that this is the way they should be teaching, right? We need to have more authentic context. We need to have more real-world application. But that's not the issue anymore. Most teachers know and expect and embrace the idea that this is the way we should teach. It's how. I don't have time. So the way we really approach this is by being very sensitive to that. We don't need to give them, lectures on the importance of authentic learning. We need to give them practical tools that can save them time so they have the resources resources and the time to actually pull this off in their classroom. So we take a very practical approach, and that's how we hopefully can win teachers over or just support them in making this happen.
Well, over the years, your Science on the Grand program, if you're not familiar with that, you bring in teachers literally from around the globe who come and sit in this very auditorium. They move through different classrooms and sessions. You bring in some of the best to get teachers thinking and asking critical questions, and I applaud that. So we're not just trying to change what happens in the classroom, we're giving us the agents of change and giving them the tools. I love it.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love to do. A lot of folks that are giving professional development to teachers are no longer in the classroom. And so the fact that we're still working with students in the classroom and able to take the best that we find, the best solutions, the best resources, and then share those with teachers, that's my favorite thing to do. So yeah, Science on the Grand every July. We get about 150 teachers that come here, and they're super passionate, and they're going back and just think the exponential impact of that, not just that year's classroom, but year after year. So every teacher that comes here and gets this, I just feel so proud of what they're bringing back to their classroom.
Good work. I want to talk about AI because I think people, if you are here because you saw that invitation and you're like, what is happening? Are our kids plagiarizing everything? Are they, what's happening with AI? What are those positives? I mean, the LEAF experiment, perfect. Are you more concerned about artificial intelligence in the classroom and how our kids are using it, or are you more excited, and why?
Well, I'm an optimist at heart. I'm an Alice in Wonderland geek, so I'm more excited. But I do acknowledge there are things, but it's not unlike any other new technology. When radio came out, there was worries about that. When the internet came out, there was certainly worries about that. AI is just another one of these. Now, I don't mean to discount those worries. We do have to think about how do we use it ethically, how do we use it responsibly. But I do think if it can save teachers time, that is their greatest resource. Again, they want to teach this way. They don't have time to. So if there are things that AI can do to save time, I love that for them. If there are things that AI can do, let's say, teachers are like, I want to have these creative ideas, but I'm just not a creative person, which that's a whole nother conversation we can have. But AI takes that argument away completely. Give me a creative lesson about photosynthesis. And it can do that for you. So I am optimistic about the time saving it can have and the ability to bring more creativity if we can get teachers to embrace it for that purpose.
Love it. Do we have any questions from the audience or from our virtual friends? We'll get you a microphone, or you can ask the question and I can repeat it for you if you'd like.
Great. Yeah, I love all this stuff. I can see it in my own career. What scale are you at with school kids these days, and what are your plans to scale it larger?
In terms of how many students we're serving and whatnot?
Yes.
Yeah. So we've been really fortunate to have tremendous growth, especially over the last 5 years. Right now, we serve over 7,000 students a year. Most of those are coming through in field trips that they come, but also summer camps. We have the after-school program that I mentioned. So lots of direct work with students. In terms of teachers, we have a couple different ways we measure that. We work with about 5,000 teachers every year directly giving this professional development. And this is all over the state, even all over the country. We travel around to do that. And then we also have a membership that we just launched, actually, where teachers can access resources. And we have over 130,000 teachers that are accessing those resources or get the newsletter on a weekly basis. So we are looking to grow all of that. It's been really exciting. So that's fun to see this growth, and a lot of it's word of mouth. That's why I say you can be a hero by sharing this information as well.
Next.
Online audience. What are your thoughts on nature-based learning?
Nature-based learning. So I use the joke that whether it's project-based learning or place-based, which is another word for that. What is it? Project, place, product, or I don't know. There's problem-based project. I said pick a P, any P. It doesn't really matter. It's all this idea of just sort of authentic learning. So I love it. Who doesn't love nature-based? Anytime you can get out there and see it hands-on, that's great. But we have to be mindful that that's not something that everyone has access to, so we have to make sure we're able to find ways to do that. But if you can, absolutely. The more authentic we can make that instruction, the stickier it is, the more engaging it is, the more you can connect to it. You can teach more, within a shorter amount of time.
Next question. I want to know from a parent perspective, and if there are parents in this room, we all are probably thinking, how do we do this at home? Is this something we can do around the dinner table? Can we ask questions differently than, how was your day? Who'd you play with? Maybe we talk differently. Maybe we flip that whole thing.
Yeah, I think there are several things. One, simple one is try to ask more open-ended questions, less, but another one I would say is don't feel like you have to always give the answers. You know, so when they ask a question, you know the answer, you don't necessarily have to answer it. Say, I don't know, what do you think? You know, just flipping that back. The more times you can get them thinking, the person doing the most talking, the person doing the most is the one doing the most thinking. So if you're the one answering it, you're the one thinking. You're reinforcing that knowledge. So I think just turning it back on them, say, well, what do you think? Or can you show me another way? All these things are ways to get them just thinking beyond whatever their first initial response is.
I really like the idea, if we have grandparents in the room, let's have our kids show us how they use AI.
Oh, absolutely.
And they can teach us how to use that platform and so many others. That's all good.
Yeah, I mean, a super fun one. I mean, we did this at Thanksgiving, was make place cards for everybody that was, you know, who all's coming for Thanksgiving today? What is your, you know, favorite animal? What's your favorite food? And what's your favorite hobby? You can put into, you know, ChatGPT, any of these AI engines, create an image of a kangaroo eating a hot dog, playing the violin, and boom, you've got it, and there's your place card. Super fun way to get them using AI. So you could ask them to create place cards like that for your next Thanksgiving dinner coming up.
I'm going to steal that idea. What's your best advice for all of us in the room who might be intimidated? We might not be educators, but we're very interested in supporting education.
My best advice is honestly to trust teachers. Those who are closest to the students in the classroom, let's stop degrading them. Let's stop telling them what they're doing wrong just because, you know, you feel like, everyone feels like they're an expert because they went through school. But I would say trust your teachers. If you have, you know, students in school, and just ask your teacher, what do I need? What can I support this student? They know your child. They can't sit through the day, and that's what they got into this for, is making those connections. They know your child. They know how you could help. So ask them questions. Trust, if you don't have, you know, children in school, just trust teachers. Don't trust, I don't mean to get too down the weeds, but don't trust the politicians. Don't trust the, the talking heads. Trust the teachers, what they say they need. And I think that will go a long way for helping to support. Again, there's things that aren't failing. We can do better. But by and large, teachers are really earnestly trying to do a great job.
I can hear teachers clapping who are joining us virtually. Thank you for supporting that. Any other questions? Yes.
I work at Aquinas College in the School of Education. So what are different types of programs that you offer for teacher candidates who are studying to be teachers and ways to encourage them to continue in their profession?
I'll repeat that so our online friends can hear. Educator or instructor at Aquinas College, what programs does Van Andel Institute for Education offer people who want to go into the teaching?
So a very practical one I'll offer is Science on the Grand. We offer that free of charge to any teacher students because we think it's so important for student educators to get this kind of experience and to be able to take that. So they can come tuition free every summer to the Science on the Grand conference. But also we have done professional development for several teaching colleges. And how do you create inquiry-based classrooms? How do you create inquiry-based projects? We have a very clear process for how to create a project-based learning unit that makes it very tangible for teachers, because it takes something that's really hard, it's really abstract. How do we, here, go infuse your learning into having the kids make the world a better place, go. You know, it's not an easy thing. So we've broken that down into some really clear steps and do professional development on that. So if you want to go to vaieducation.org, you can look at some of those, email me, I can definitely connect with you and we can do that.
Great. Mm-hmm. Anything else? I love seeing how this ties in to the work being done right upstairs. And it's fun to think that students who have come through the program right here from West Michigan as third graders will someday be sitting at the benches looking for those cures for cancer, Parkinson's, all of those diseases. So thank you for getting our next generation of thinkers ready to go and to get up there and get working for cures. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Terra has mentioned her team would love to show you around the Education Institute, which literally is right down the street. They'll be out in the lobby afterwards, and they can walk down there with you, and you can just kind of peek around and see what they see. They have a massive tortoise and other cool creatures, so you'll want to get some photos with them as well. But that will happen as soon as we're done here. I want to thank Lake Michigan Credit Union once again for supporting education and the good work being done here. And if you enjoyed this lecture series, we have 2 more left this year. Head to our website, vai.org, to see what those topics are. And even if you look at them and you're like, I don't even understand what that is, great. Be curious. Come and find out more. It's a great way to just continue to build a great community around this whole idea of science and learning. So thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope you can come down and see the good work being done right down the hill in the education area. Have a great day.
You guys want to raise your hands so they can see who to follow. You're going to follow, yeah, here you've got Ben in the blue shirt, Michael in the maroon shirt. They're going to be your hosts down there. So if you want to follow them down the education, you'll be all set and have a great time.
Thanks.